Okay, we talked before when we created a verifiable log and a verifiable map, we looked at how to add raw data to logs and maps. Let's look at some of the object hash features and the redactability features that we have. So let's go back. Let's create a new. Let's go create a new log. So we'll go to the shell. We'll select the demo rule that we had. Let's create a new log and let's call it redacted demo. So let's create a new log and now let's add an entry to that log. So I'm going to add this entry here. See, this entry is a JSON document and it has two key value pairs. It has a name and it has a date of birth. And so I'm going to add this as redactable JSON. And this comes back as normal with a leaf hash for the data that we've added. Now let's add a second entry. Let's put Susan in with her date of birth and we'll add that as redactable JSON. And again, we get back a standard receipt. Now the interesting thing when we add JSON documents and we ask for it to be redactable, what happens when the server receives it is the server replaces each of the values in any of the objects with a pair of redacted nonce and the value itself. And so let's go and practice, see what that's done. Let's go back to our log now and let's go to fetch entries. And let's take a look at the data that we have in there. So we're going to fetch that as JSON. And we should have two entries have come back. And we can see here's entry number 0. We have date of birth, and in that entry, we can see we have, rather than just the date, 1985, January 1st, we have this pair where we have this big 256-bit random string followed by the actual value that we're interested in. Then again, for the name, we have the big long random string followed by the actual name. We have the same on the second record. Now the reason that we add those those nonces in there, is you may have a set of users where you would like them to be able to retrieve the data from the log, but you might want to only give them a certain field. For example, maybe you want to let them see the name, but not the date of birth field. What we'll do is we'll go back and we'll create an access rule that allows someone to be able to access it in that manner. But before we do that, let's quickly look at the root hash for the first entry. Let's just remember it's SWREE and the root hash overall is BZW2. So let's go back to the access rules for this account. Let's create a new access rule. We'll generate here, maybe we'll allow the public to access this. We'll hit public just for something different. Let's not give the full set of permissions, just maybe give read all entries, get the tree hash, prove entry inclusion. So the read operations on a log. Won't give any map permissions, no account level permissions. Let's just only allow redacted demo access. And now let's pick the particular field. Let's allow the name field. We don't want to allow the date of birth, and so by simply omitting it, it's not allowed. Let's give it a comment, redacted demo, and save that. So we've now set a second access rule up that the public can use. So when the public tries to access, so if anyone tries to access this particular log without providing an API key, this rule will fire and we should get that redacted data back. So let's try that. Let's go back to try and shell. And here, now let's go to redacted demo. We'll use this public access that we just created. Let's list the existing logs. And you'll notice that when we do this, we don't have permission to list those logs. But what we can do is we can load that by a particular name. Because the reason we don't have the permission to list it is we didn't give the list logs permission. So let's load it by name. And that name was redacted demo. And now in that redacted demo, let's fetch the entries and see what we come up with. So let's fetch as JSON. And so here's the interesting thing that's come back. Our two entries have come back as before, but in this first one, we have a date of birth, but then instead of getting the actual value, we instead get this special string that says redacted that has the hash, and the hash here is the object hash of the pair of the list of the redactable nonce and the value itself. And the reason why we return that is so that any clients that are looking at this, they can still have confidence that the data that they've got can calculate to that same root hash for the entry and the same root hash for the overall log. So they can still perform all of the correctness. They can still verify the correct operation of the log without necessarily being able to see all of the fields. This client doesn't know what the actual date of birth is for this particular user, but they do know that this user exists, and they do know that there is a date of birth field. They just don't know what value it is. We've showed this here for a particular log. We can use this exact same methodology for adding redactable fields inside of the map as well. And while we've just done this for a simple one-level data structure, we can use the slash syntax and redacted fields to give sort of quite powerful levels of redacting sub-elements within a particular record, not just the record itself. Now, interestingly enough, we can see here we do have the option to fetch as raw data as well, and I'll just show you what that gives. Fetch as raw data actually gives back the object hash for that record. You can see we still have the same diagram generated here. We still have the same leaf hash and the same root hash for the tree. We still apply the same structural logic for creating that data, but instead of taking the leaf hash of the JSON text representation, which is of course not canonical, we're instead using the object hash format to go ahead and create a canonical representation for that data. And we covered the object hash format in a tutorial earlier.